Hi, Sean.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, hear you and see you.
Okay, well, I'm on my third computer here, so my iPad does not work. So
Okay, Kathy, we are live.
Okay, thank you. All right, good evening and welcome to a virtual meeting of the City of Dublin Architectural Review Board. The Ohio Legislature passed several emergency laws to address the pandemic, including the ability for public entities to have virtual meetings. We appreciate this ability to maintain our continuity of government. For the present time, we are holding our meetings online and live streaming those meetings on YouTube. You can access the live stream from the city's website. The meeting procedure for each case this evening will begin with a staff presentation, followed by an opportunity for the applicant to make a presentation. The board will then have the opportunity to ask clarifying questions prior to hearing public comment. Finally, the board will deliberate on each case. In order to submit any questions or comments during the meeting, please use the form under the streaming video on the city's website. These questions and comments will be relayed to the board by the meeting moderator. We want to accommodate public participation to the greatest extent possible and welcome your comments on cases. Please use a valid name and address when submitting your comments, and refrain from making any inappropriate comments. This is not a perfect system, but we do appreciate your patience. So we will wait a minute for the display of the flag, and then we will say the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. All right. Judy, would you do roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Alexander?
Here.
Ms. Cram?
Here.
Mr. Cotter?
Here.
Mr. Kanaki?
Here.
Ms. Bryan?
Here. Thank you. I need a motion to accept the documents into record and approve the meeting minutes from November 18th, 2020.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Mr. Cotter?
Yes.
Mr. Kanaki?
Yes.
Ms. Bryan?
Yes.
Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Okay. The Architectural Review Board is responsible for review of construction and modification or alteration to any site in the review district or area subject to architectural review under the provision of the Zoning Code Section 153.177. The board has the decision-making responsibility on these cases. A swearing of anyone who intends to address the board on any case is necessary. So if anyone who is intending to address the board on cases, please stand, raise your right hand, and answer in the affirmative. Okay. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony to this board?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Tonight we have no cases that are eligible for the consent agenda. There are two modifications to the originally published agenda. The following cases have been postponed to a future meeting at the request of the applicants. Case 3, which is 72 to 84 North High Street. It was an informal review for feedback on a new mixed-use development. And case 4, body residence at 185 South Riverview. It was a minor project review for a new single-family home. So those will come to us at another time. So the agenda order will be as follows. Case 1, Begley Residence at 6199 Dublin Road. Case 2, Beckert Residence at 156 South High Street. And case 5, Getaway Brewing Company sign. So are the Begleys ready? If you are.
We are, absolutely.
Would you turn your video on? Thank you. Ooh, feedback. Yikes. Okay. The application is a request. This is Begley Residence at 6199 Dublin Road. Case number 20-202 ARB-INF. It's an informal review. The application is a request for an informal review and feedback for an addition and exterior modification to a single-family residence and a new detached garage west of Dublin Road, 350 feet south of the intersection with Waterford. Is a 1.32 acre and is zoned limited suburban residential. Mr. Ridge will be our presenter, and I'll give you a few minutes to put your presentation up.
All right, great. Can you see this okay?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening. This is, as was stated, a request for informal review providing non-binding feedback for proposed exterior modifications as well as additions to an existing structure at 6199 Dublin Road in the Historic District. The site is highlighted in yellow on your screen. It is approximately 1.3 acres in size and is located on the west side of Dublin Road, just south of Waterford Drive. This is a kind of an overview of the surrounding zoning districts. This site is unique as it is on the southern tip of the historic district and is zoned R2, which is limited suburban residential development district. That's obviously going to have different development standards and regulations than, say, the historic residential district or historic south districts. So this slide provides some surrounding context again. Again, the site is highlighted in yellow. Number one is immediately to the north, and that's the site of the car barn. And then number two is an existing single-family home on the east side of Dublin Road. Directly east of the site, it's not pointed out on the slide necessarily, but immediately to the east is a large area of land that is largely vacant. There is an existing agricultural structure there, but that's the only structure on that site. And then these photos provide some context to the existing conditions of the site. As you can see on the southern portion of the existing home is a one-story, single-story portion of the home clad in a stone material, and then you've got the two-story massing immediately to the north. You can also see photos that the site is pretty heavily wooded. So what you see here are both the existing and proposed site plans. It is a little difficult to see exactly what is proposed. So I highlighted the major additions to the site in blue on the right-hand side. So the one on the southern portion of the home is actually a detached garage. And then on the northern portion of the home is an expansion of the living space. Other areas of modification are shown with the sort of hashed marks on the site plan. The home, even with the addition, will maintain its central location. As I stated, the site is rather large compared to most in the historic district. So even with the addition, it is still pretty centrally located. The applicant is proposing to modify the driveway. So you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, currently there is a circular driveway with an island in the middle. And on the right, you can see that has been straightened out and provides access to the detached garage. Finally, the detached garage is forward of the primary structure. So per code, accessory structures are to be either to the side or rear of primary structures. So in this case, the accessory structure would require approval of a variance through the Board of Zoning Appeals. So staff has asked that the ARB consider that, whether or not that is appropriate siting tonight. We'll get into the elevations now. What you're seeing here is the east elevation facing Dublin Road. So on the top of your screen is the existing, and on the bottom is the proposed elevation. Working south to north, you can see modifications on the south side include an expanded porch, as well as a standing seam overhang. The single front entry is proposed to be replaced with a double door entry. The two-story mass in the center is relatively untouched or unchanged. And then all the way to the north is the proposed addition to the home. So this expanded living space is proposed to be connected to the two-story mass, utilizing a shorter connector hyphen. That hyphen is supposed to be sheathed in a standing seam metal roofing, as well as the porch. And then you can see on this addition as well, the applicant is proposing a double door entry, which leads out to a at-grade patio. And the applicant is also proposing barn door shutters. What you see here is the west elevation, or the rear of the home. So again, existing is on the top, proposed on the bottom. Again, moving south to north, the applicant is proposing to expand and cover some balcony space at the southern portion of the home. The center two-story mass is again proposed to remain relatively unchanged, although the applicant is proposing to install some new windows on that portion of the home. And then to the north is the proposed expansion or addition to the home. So what was presented, or what presents as a single-story addition from Dublin Road, you can see here is a two-story, has a two-story mass. This addition does have a decent amount of fenestration proposed in the windows. And again, you can see the connecting hyphen, the connector hyphen in between the existing and the bulk of the new addition. The applicant is also proposing a new balcony on the addition and is proposing to clad this elevation in similar or the same materials as are found elsewhere on the home. And then finally, you've got the north elevation here. Again, you can see existing on the left, proposed on the right. On the right-hand side, you can see the side gable, which forms the mass of the addition. You can also see the at-grade patio proposed on the east side of the home, and the balcony proposed on the south side, or excuse me, the west side of the home. And then you've got the south elevation here existing on the left, proposed on the right. So again, here you can see the expanded balcony, as well as the roof expansion with the standing seam over those balconies. And you can see the front porch expansion on the east side of the home. Also on this elevation, you can see in the bottom right-hand side of your screen, the proposed detached garage. So you can see here, it is kind of integrated into the hillside. And then this is a little bit more about the proposed detached garage. It is a single-story, three-car garage, approximately 16 feet in height, and again is integrated to the hillside. You can see the west elevation is shown in the bottom of your screen here. So again, vertical siding, an 8-panel door, 3 8-panel doors, and a standing seam metal roof. And then the applicant did provide some construction window and door details. That is really above and beyond what is required at this point in the review, but were provided for your consideration. And then finally, staff has provided a few discussion questions for the board's consideration. Does the board support the proposed site layout, including the detached garage? Again, as proposed, that would require a variance for the siting of a detached garage. Does the board support the proposed mass and scale of the additions? does the board support the conceptual architectural character and details of the home and any other considerations by the board? So I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have, and the applicant is also in attendance tonight. Thank you.
Unmute. Does the applicant have any comments at this point?
Kathy?
Who's trying to talk?
Kathy, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. So we certainly can answer any questions that anybody has. I don't know if we necessarily have anything to go over or cover. I know we've spent a lot of time going over the guidelines and the codes and feel pretty confident we're about 99% in line with code and guidelines. I know there's an exception with the garage being forward of the original structure as well as the new addition, but there's reasons behind that. I think if Chase goes back to the picture that shows the view of the home from the south, the garage, and first, if we move it backward at all, it's going to cover the historic rock staircase that goes from the driveway up to the first floor of the house, which I think is a significant historical piece to the home, number one. Number two, if we move the garage to anywhere else, we also begin to obstruct views from the property to the south of ours. So the third on that would be it's well below the variances as far as the height. And if you actually were to look at some of the pictures I think my wife provided,
ask him to pull one of them up.
Where you wouldn't even really be able to see the garage from the street. You would actually have to be in our driveway to be able to see where the garage will be. If we go to the north, the part of the home that we're building, in addition, the reason that we want to have that set forward of the original property is to not obstruct the views of the original property to the north. We move that back at all, it obstructs the views from the original bedroom of the barn and of the property to the north of us. So, you know, the only thing I see here that we have asking for a variance is those two pieces.
Okay, thank you. Board, what questions might you have, board members?
I have one question initially. It looks like the windows in the original volume of the house facing front, the windows that are currently divided in 3 are being replaced by windows divided in 4. Are you also replacing the windows in that 2-story bay?
The large window? Are you talking about the large?
Yes.
No, we're going to
So
keep that.
That's the reason those are staying vertical. Okay.
Yes, those are staying.
Okay.
Anyone else have questions?
Yeah, I just had one quick question for staff, because the property says it's recommended contributing. Is that the way I read it? So is the property a contributing structure?
It is recommended contributing according to the 2016 HCA.
And I mean, is there anything? What makes it contributing? Maybe I might ask one of my other Gary. Is there something to that property that somehow makes it unique or special?
Well, so as of 2017, I believe it actually met the threshold for in terms of its age.
Okay.
And it is a unique character and style to the district as well. So yeah.
Okay, and just for me, is there something we're trying to preserve from that? Just or is there something specific, or we're just trying to style and the massing is what we think is its age, style, and massing is what makes it contributing?
Yeah, Nikki, do you have anything additional to add, or maybe you can better answer that question?
Yeah, so as part of the historic and cultural assessment, the consultant identified a number of integrity markers that they used to evaluate all properties against. Those integrity markers are location, design, setting, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association. All of those integrity markers for this property are met, and the condition is listed as good. I also would second Chase's assertion that this is an architectural style you don't see elsewhere in historic Dublin, largely because it's a larger parcel of land as well as a newer home.
Okay. So I'm just trying to, because certainly if they're conforming, we want to make sure we're more careful with them. I just want to try to make sure that we're, at least that I'm clear on what we think makes it conforming, try to make sure that remains.
When you say conforming, what do you mean?
Well, that's the question that I was asked, because certainly it's a contributing factor, and what makes it contributing? What makes it conforming to be contributing? So how does that structure? Why is it why was it deemed contributing, other than maybe its age, and how the structure sits on the land, just to make sure that.
Right. So if you actually went back and looked at, I think that you had someone come in and look at the historical significance not too many years ago. The actual architectural structure came back as none. The setting is really what the historic significance of the home is. The rock wall out front, the rock wall that comes down our driveway, and some of the rock staircase outside, some of the rock on the home, which is what we're trying to preserve more than anything else. And I think that's what makes it historically significant. Okay.
Yeah, for me, just as it contributes, we want to make sure that the things that make it contributing remain, right, in our answer as we go through
those are the things we're most trying to preserve.
Yep. Okay.
Amy, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay. Frank, do you have any questions?
No, I mean, other than I like the fact they kept the front tall windows. And also, like Gary mentioned, and also Sean, I know where he's going on this because we had that question come up 2 months ago as well about, these structures a little bit outside of the normal historic district and what is the character we're trying to keep or not. But other than that, no, I have no questions.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments?
We do not have any public comment on this application.
Okay, then we're ready for board discussion on the 3 questions. And I apologize, my printer broke and I'm having to use my iPad and it doesn't always cooperate. So could you put the 3 questions up again, please? Okay, so first question is, does the board support the proposed site layout, including the detached garage? Who would like to start?
I can start, certainly. Certainly, I think, as the applicant said, I think the detached garage for me is actually nicely done. It's in a good spot, and I went past it last week and just looked at where it has. It's hard to visualize it a bit from the road, but it looks like it fits in a nice space. So from the detached garage side, I think for me it's okay. I still maybe a little more discussion on the north side and just how it juts a bit out front. I think, as the applicant said, it helps to mitigate the sight lines that they're looking for. So generically, I think the way it sits and how it fits into the site is okay for me. Maybe as we go a little bit more into how that sight line is, because originally I had a little bit of thought about the north side, but if it fits architecturally, then I don't have a fundamental issue with that.
Okay, thanks, Sean.
I'll go next. I think this. I don't think our standards address sites like this very well, and I think this site plan is very good in terms of this taking advantage of this particular site. So I'm fine with the garage projecting forward. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think it's important that a house this big have a detached garage. I know we've tried to encourage other applicants to have detached garages. And this is a good example of the value of a detached garage and how it can be subordinate to the mass of the house. I also like the way the addition to the north is separated by and intentionally diminished relative to the rest of the house. So I think that makes sense as well. So I am definitely in favor of the particular site plan and would support the detached garage the way it is.
Thank you.
Hi, I second what everyone else is saying. I support the layout. I'm fine with the north addition going forward so that the roof line doesn't block the second story windows on that original portion. And I'm fine with the detached garage. My only concern with the detached garage is from the street, all we're gonna see is the roof. Or I think we might see the roof. So I think we would, when you come back, if we can get a view from the east elevation that includes the garage, that would be helpful. And it might be a matter of if all we see is the roof from the east, that we just might need some planting, some vegetation or something along it. We don't have that view with us today, but I'm sure it will be fine. Just, I would recommend bringing that view when you come back.
Hey, Amy, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Chase, would you mind? That's where I want you to show the photos, because I actually took a picture because of our pine trees where I don't think you'll see any of the garage. Is there any way to bring that up?
Yeah, just give me one moment.
Okay.
Yeah, I figure if as long as there's some type of pine trees or vegetation on that slope in front of it, I think it will be perfectly fine.
So the pictures to the south, you can see there those pine trees.
Oh yeah, that will block it. That's totally fine.
Okay, that's in front of the garage.
Okay. Great.
Or that's the view. He means that's the view from the street.
That would be the view
Yeah.
from the street. You won't see the garage at all.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Frank?
Nope, I think everyone said it. Detached garage is always something we're pointing towards, and I think the property, the proposed new structure, basically keeps in the feel of the house. How it's almost a rural setting with the rock and the natural landscape. So I think the house fits in nicely with that. That's it.
Okay. And I ditto all of that. So the second question is, does the board support the proposed mass and scale of the additions? So in the guidelines, it recommends the overall character, building scale and mass and development pattern, mass, form, and lot coverage should be similar to surrounding buildings within the neighborhood. As we've said, this is unique and should add to the continuity and compatibility of the neighborhood. So mass and scale.
Again, for me, it's okay. I like, as Gary said earlier, I think having it having the addition on the north side detached with the hyphen in there makes it, I think, shows a change of what we're trying to do. Okay, it is, and as it's only from the front one story, I think it fits in quite well. And I think just the way the garage is going to fit in, I think it's actually going to look kind of nice. It's going to look like sitting inside of the hill, even though you won't see it from the other side. So for me, I don't have a comment. I think it's fine for me.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with the mass and scale of the addition. I may have a comment on some of the other points a little bit later, but generally
Right.
I'm fine with it.
Okay. Amy?
Yeah, mass and scale, totally fine.
Frank?
Not a problem here.
Okay, great. So I think this next one is where we're going to get the most of the conversation. Does the board support the conceptual architectural character and details of the home? So Sean, you want to get us started on this?
I think you're on mute, Sean.
That's like a thank you. Sorry about that. The only comment I had. So if you look at the new, and it came up in I think the consultant's report too. If you look at the new addition on the first floor where those barn doors are and the steps, for me, I agree with the consultant on that. They look a bit out of place. It just looks, it doesn't seem to flow. I mean, on the other side, they have a similar look, but on the front, it doesn't look like that. And just how that for me looked a bit strange as it faced Dublin Road. With side doors. And for me, the other one, I think from the other, I think the balconies look nice around the I think it makes a nice feature around the structure too. So for me, the only thing I saw was really that on the north side where those doors were, and just how it stepped out into the front yard, for me didn't look in place, and it looked a bit strange there.
Gary?
For the most part, I had the same reaction to the barn doors. It seems forced with the style of the house and seems more of a cliche that's common now. Whereas the rest of the details of the house, I think, are really well tuned to the aesthetic of the house. That, and particularly the crossbuck pattern. The crossbuck pattern that you see on those doors and you see on the garage doors is not something you kind of expect. This house is bleeding into early 50s modernism and things we'd see in ranches. And that crossbuck pattern is not something I'm used to seeing. So I would get rid of the sliding doors if you can. I think it also creates a scale problem because it begins to read as 4 doors across there. So it's a pretty big mass. And so it's beginning to detract, I think, from the big window that's a part of the original house. I don't mind a pair of doors. I don't agree with the consultant's report that this door should look like the front door. I think that's a problem. And I don't agree with the consultant's report that says the metal roof should be over this area covering the patio, because I think the applicants have done a great job differentiating the front door from this door. And I don't have a problem with the patio there either, because I think the landscape and the fact that it sits at grade, it's not going to be that prominent. But it's really just that, and I'm nitpicking because there are a lot of very positive things about this. But that's really the only issue I have.
Thank you. Amy?
Actually, my comments are the same as Gary's. Lose the sliding doors on the addition, but I disagreed with the consultant. I like how the door's different. I like how it's separate. I like everything else about it except for the sliding barn shutter doors. And my only other comment is when you come back, it'd be nice to see what type of windows you're using. I know it's hard to match because some of your windows are the original. They look like they're the original metal single pane casement windows that I used to have in my house. And those are really hard to match to new windows. So it'd be nice to see what new windows you're using just to ensure they match. But otherwise, I'm good with it.
Thank you. Frank?
Yep, I'm good. Everybody else did the same thing. And as a matter of fact, I was trying to think of any kind of style you would have 2 sets of front doors being the same. There really isn't a house style you would do that. So I agree that front door should be different, usually grander than a side door. That's it. Everybody else said it.
Thank you. And my comments are pretty much the same. I found the barn door and the step down to be a little jarring. It was like I really liked everything else, but that just jumped out at me. It was like it didn't fit. I do think that. Lori, did you have
Sorry. I forgot I was not on mute. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I apologize.
No, that's okay. That's okay. So I think that, I guess my question to you now is, do you have what you need? You feel like you know what you need to do now to make the changes so that this would go through in the next meeting?
No, I appreciate all of your time and your thoughts. I think some of the thought because we've read the code pretty well, I was under the impression that with a new addition, you can go more contemporary, that it doesn't have to. We try to do our best to preserve everything and make the addition not dominated by any means what's existing. So I guess I wanted to make it a little bit more contemporary with the barn doors that would also match the existing garage door, which would also match what we want to be on the new garage door, which when we looked at a lot of Old Dublin, and Chase has the pictures, there's a lot of sliding barn doors that were approved by the board on new homes in the historic district and on barns in the historic district. So I guess that was kind of my thought is why can't I do something like that on an addition when that's something that should be kind of its own design.
because it doesn't go with the rest of your addition. Because
Yeah, I think that's it. It's just so architecturally different than everything else.
You want to address that?
I don't know how to say it.
What would be your thought? Go
Do
ahead.
you have any recommendations on how that could be detailed? That would
Just take
fit-
the barn doors off. Everything, I'm fine with everything else. The door, the patio.
Well,
Gary?
I agree. The barn doors, both stylistically and scale-wise, are a problem because it reads as 4 units across, which makes that area seem massive. So I agree with Amy. Just get rid of the barn doors and leave the 2 doors there. It reduces the scale problem and the stylistic incongruity.
I'm saying I can't have any doors. So you're saying even if I don't have barn-looking doors, any kind of sliding doors is not okay?
Yeah, I just don't think sliding doors fit with your design there.
Are there other doors she could put there?
Well, I think as Gary said, like I think just 2, the way it reads, it looks like 4 doors. So 2 doors, like right now you have the double door. I mean, if you want to change your type of double door, that's fine. I just don't, I mean, I
Well,
think the double door you have now is totally fine with me.
I
in my
think
personal.
I think part of the reason too is it's our bedroom. So we want the light for our bedroom, but we also want privacy because it's our bedroom. So without having necessarily curtains. So that was part of the thought as well.
Yeah, I think you might just have to find a solution on the inside rather than the outside.
Would one option be to simplify the details and match the color of the doors to the siding of the house? Do you think that would be possible?
Or I was also looking at, Gary might be able to help out with this. You know how the barn doors are a cross pattern of an X. What if you found a way to make something that's a grid pattern to match the window layout? It'd still be 4, you'd still read 4 across, but I think it would fit better. You'd be keeping with the same lines.
Why don't you just develop the plan so you can put the doors on the inside? Just put the doors on the inside.
Which would take care of the problem.
That's right. You've got the privacy. You say you don't want window treatments, so we don't have to worry about them getting in the way of some kind of blind.
You know, I appreciate the feedback. And by no means do I not think it's good feedback, and we can certainly work with Dave, our architect, on what we want to do. But am I right or am I wrong when I look at code and I look at guidelines? It's an addition, and I'd have to go back and probably cite code in addition, but I'm not necessarily sure there's a whole lot when I look at Part D in additions, and I think existing structure. We're getting awfully nitpicky on an addition, which I'm not sure if code supports the board's opinion on that.
The design.
Well, it does, because you also have to consider the guidelines and looking at architectural integrity of what it will appear from the street. So, yes, our opinion would be supported.
So actually, though, if I go and I look at what you've supported in Old Dublin, we shared some pictures of the similar designs, and I think number 2 on Part D, contemporary design for additional additions to existing properties shall not be discouraged.
I would argue that door you put on there is not a contemporary door.
Yeah, there's nothing.
Stylistically, you've got an architect, you've got an architectural historian, you've got a board. We had another architectural historian write the document. It doesn't fit stylistically, okay?
Yeah.
I disagree, but okay.
Yeah, but that's our position.
Again, I'm looking at code, and I just so we'll have to go back and we'll think about that. We appreciate your opinion on it.
Well, I can tell you if you come back with those doors, they would get voted down. So do keep that in mind. I want to save you time and money. Anything else? Okay. All right. Thank you. We'll move on to the next case.
Thank you.
So then the next case is the Beckert residence at 156 South High Street. This is another informal review. The application is a request for an informal review and feedback based on feedback obtained on the October 28th, 2020 meeting for a new two-story single-family residence on a 0.24 acre site zoned Bridge Street District Historic Residential. The site is east of South, 100 feet south of the intersection with John Wright Lane, and Mr. Ridge will be our presenter.
All right, can you see this okay? Okay. Yeah, so as just mentioned, this is an informal review providing non-binding feedback. This is actually the second informal review for 156 South High Street in the Historic District. You all are pretty familiar with the site at this point, but again, it's highlighted in yellow here for your reference on the east side of South High Street, south of Penny Hill Lane. So these photos provide some surrounding context of the site. Numbers 1 and 2 are across the street on the west side of South High Street. Number 3 is immediately north of the site, and number 4 is an updated photo of the construction at 158 South High Street, immediately south of this site. And then these are just a couple larger photos of the existing conditions. And on the right-hand side of both these photos, you can see 158 is nearing completion of the framing. And then 156 will lie immediately north of this home. So for a brief history, as you all are aware, this came before you informally in October of this year, where you all provided informal feedback. Overall, the board was supportive of the site layout and appreciated the open rear yard. The board was generally supportive of a two-story home. However, the ARB expressed concerns with the total height of the home and recommended that the applicant refer to nearby homes for comparable heights. The ARB recommended that the applicant also simplify the elevations and align the sizes and locations, among other things. So the applicant has provided a number of updates, and I won't read all of these, but on your screen for reference, they were also provided in your packet. Just a couple of them. The applicant eliminated the stone wall along South High Street frontage and reduced the height by approximately 1 foot 7 inches. And then a number of architectural elements, such as the gang story windows were replaced with single windows, shutters were removed, and finials were removed as well. A couple more here. The applicant did raise the stairwell window on the north elevation of the main structure, and the box bay window above the garage doors was removed and width. So this is the proposed site plan. Again, I'll just quickly go through this because it hasn't changed much from last time we saw it. But the home is sited at the 15-foot front yard setback and is closer to the south property line. Drive access is provided to the north of the home, and then the applicant is proposing a large open rear yard. The next few slides are of the elevations. I have provided the October 2020 version, the current version, just for providing a side-by-side. Again, on this elevation, the applicant removed the ganged double windows in favor of single windows. The applicant modified the forwardmost gable and the cladding material transitions on that gable. And again, here you can see in the gable ends, the applicant simplified the material transitions there and removed the finials as well. A couple items that were discussed at the last meeting have been retained, such as the bullseye window and the arched front entry and pendant light. This is the north elevation. So again, on this elevation, the large box bay window on the rear gable has been reduced in size, both height and width, slightly. The applicant has aligned the windows over the stairwell on the primary mass and has pulled the stone water table up to be more consistent throughout. And the applicant has simplified the gable ends on the side gables here. You can also see that the applicant has updated the rear deck to be a more traditional design over the more contemporary design from October. And on this elevation, you can see again some simplification of materials in the gable ends, the removal of some shutters on the rear of the primary massing, and that updated decking material as well. And then this is the east, I'm sorry, that's supposed to be, say, south elevation. So this is the elevation facing 158 South High Street. Again, here, simplification of the gable ends and a more consistent window size and pattern on this end as well. So for this one, again, staff has provided some discussion questions for your consideration. The first being, does the board support the proposed height of the home? Does the board support the architectural details of the home? Does the board support the conceptual exterior materials and material transitions? And then any other considerations. So again, I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have, and the applicant is also in attendance tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the applicant have any comments at this point?
Yeah, first of all, thank you guys again. Appreciate your feedback last time around. And as you see, we made some changes here. I guess one of the things I wanted to point out are just that we didn't really get into the first go around is talking about, as the proud owner of the probably the most narrow lot that Old Dublin has, it certainly produces some challenges, which has caused us to go up. Our goal is to try to maintain one floor living, but also be able to have a couple of extra bedrooms for folks. And that's why we did go up to that second story there. And Tim, I think we'll address the height, because I think we had that measured wrong as well. So we want to make sure we give you guys the correct measurements for to the midpoint of the eaves. And also to talk about the cupola, because I think that also has provided some discussion before too. And the primary purpose of the cupola certainly has an aesthetic point of view, but also that sits above the kitchen and dining area. And as we talked about before, I think Kathy, it was you who talked about, looking out at our neighbors next to us. We want to make sure our sight lines and how we lined up. And you can see in that south elevation, we only have 2 windows there, again, to kind of limit what we look out to. And the cupola is a source of light coming into that room because of, again, the limitations that we have for natural lighting. That was really a dual purpose from our standpoint. I mean, other than that, I think I just want to make sure that I explain those 2 areas, because I think those will certainly be of conversation that we'll have here in a little bit. And I'll let Tim also provide what the measurements are. But I guess one thing too, again, going back to, I think it's the width of the lot that certainly provides the challenge that we have. And looking at the houses that are immediately south of us, the smallest lot, we got 90 feet, 83 feet, 85 feet versus 66. So when you shrink that, it certainly, causes one to go up more so than trying to get, going wide, which is some of the other houses have done. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Tim, did you have anything you wanted to say before we get started on these questions? Okay.
I'll address these height dimensions. I was dimensioning to the second eave height. And I was doing that because that seemed to be what the board was concerned about in terms of how it relates to the other neighboring houses. But if you take the average from the bottom of the eave to the ridge, which is what I understand is the height that you're looking for, that's 24 feet on the first gable there at the front. So that'd be from finished grade to the average height. The eave itself is 18'8" above grade, and that number I think is more of what you're looking at as it relates to the other eave heights. I don't know what the average height is from the ridge eaves, but I went out and measured. I have a little laser measuring device that I was able to sit on the ground and hit up to the eave, so I have the comparative eave heights from the neighbors. And then on the north elevation, that dimension to the middle or to the average between the ridge and the eave is 25'6".
Okay, thank you.
So the house directly across from the street at 167. At 167, I just wanted to add that height is 17'6", and that house is about 3 feet above the sidewalk. There's a stone wall in the front, so from the street it's actually more like 20'6", and we're at 18'8", at lowest eave height in the front. The house directly to the north, picture number 3, 138 South High. That one measured at 15'4", and that's more of a 1.5 story type structure. And then the existing house to the south at 182, the 1-story house, that one is 12 feet from finished grade to the eave. And then the house south of that at 190 is a 2-story house, and that eave height is at roughly 22 feet 3 inches, but it's 3.5 feet below the sidewalk. So that nets out more like 18 feet. So that's actually even right on where we are, that first eave height. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. So for our discussion, board members, the first question has to do with the proposed height of the home. And in terms of height should be compatible to surrounding buildings within the neighborhood. And I think that I want to clarify my intent on that is not just the number of feet, but visually how it appears on the street. Because many of the houses on that street, you actually walk down to the houses. This house sits up already a little higher than some of the others do. So the question about, do you support the height?
This is Amy. I'll go because I piggyback off of what you just said, Kathy. To me, it is how it visually looks. And when I look at the roof, I look at the highest point on that roof. It's typically the crest of your gable. So all those numbers of eave height or average doesn't really matter to me so much. It's just the overall look and feel. And since this is a narrow lot and this building is taking up most of the lot, it actually feels taller. And so in that sense, I really, the pitch of your roof is pretty steep. It's a very steep pitch. And so personally, I think it still feels too tall to me. I love the rendering the consultant did in their report. It's basically 1.5 stories, and that would be perfectly fine with me. I'd have absolutely no problem with that whatsoever. But I just believe the house is too vertical. Between the pitch of the gables, you have the two front gables and the pitch of the roof. It just looks too high. And again, it's not a solid number to me. It's the fact that you reduced it 1 foot 7 inches isn't the key to me. It's the overall look.
Thank you, Amy. Gary?
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
Go ahead, Gary.
go ahead. This is
I have similar reservations to the reservations Amy's expressed, and what my concern is, and what makes this house seem, for me, maybe taller than everything in the surroundings, is the large gables in the front, because the vertical wall doesn't stop at the eave line, and if that, because I went out and checked the one building there was reference to, and I was comparing it to the eave line, and if the eave line was similar, which it is, and we didn't have these big gables, because the wall plane actually extends up. The wall plane does not stop at the eave, but it goes up. So that carries your eye up through the elevation. So it makes it feel really tall. And I think the pitch of the roof could be reduced. And there are ways you could push the second story behind. And I know we hear people say, well, I wanted to vault that space. But the second story that's projecting forward could be pushed back and built on the one-story volume. So you could reduce the mass at the street front, still have second floor bedrooms, but push them back. So I think, and also, I don't know if you have to even go as far down as the consultant proposed, but you could drop the eave line and the windows project up slightly into the eave, maybe not to that extent. But I think there are ways to still accomplish bedrooms at the second floor and significantly reduce the mass at the street front. Because to me, when you left the meeting, I had two issues. One was, is this really a vernacular structure? And two was the height. And it seems, for me, the most challenging issue is the height, which probably I could not support what's proposed right now. I think that, for me, that needs to be addressed a little bit more.
Thank you, Gary. Sean?
Yeah, I'm a bit the same, because now we have the height of the, let's say 150, the one south of it, 158. The top of the crest of the roof is about around 25 feet, and here you're going to be 21 at the eave. So for me, I think, as Gary said, it really presents itself as a big wall, a big mass sitting there that draws, as Amy said, draws your eye all the way to the top. So when we talked last time about how big it was hard to scale what it might be to the house next to it. But now that we have the drawing of the house next to it, I feel like those two sitting next to each other will look very strange. You'll have one kind of massed house and the other one being lower and in a different structure. So I tend to agree. Somehow the massing still, or the height, really feels like it's going to overshadow the house. Let's say if we just look at the house to the south. And again, I agree. The pitch of the roof is still quite steep. I mean, I know you reduced it a little bit, but still, there could be some avenue there. I didn't think about what Gary was talking about of moving some of the things to the back, but that also could help. But I agree. It still feels like a big wall of house. I think it looks nice, but it's going to look I feel like it looks out of place when you're going to set it next to the house right beside it.
Thank you. Frank?
Not to rehash what everybody else has said, one thing I do want to say is that I do like the way the house has been simplified. The finials are taken off. I think there's a lot more. The house looks a lot cleaner now when you look at it, especially from the northern facade and so on. So in that regard, I think you are on the right track. I think it does fit in a lot better with what you've done there, but everybody else has said everything else. So I'm going to cut off from that point.
And my concern is that it already is going to, when you look at the house next door, I mean, it's going to look like the house on the hill, and it will look out of place with the rest of them. The others, there's steps down. They have the 2 stories, and they're kind of tucked back. I understand your challenges with lot configuration, but I think you've got some suggestions here to not make it look so high in the front. Okay. All right, the next question is, does the board support the architectural details of the home? Amy, you want to go ahead and start us?
Sure. We're moving in the right direction with simplifying it. I think it could be simplified more, particularly the front porch and the front entryway can be simplified. The south side is fine for the most part. I can tolerate the north side. I still think it could be simplified a little bit, but we're getting closer. But totally still do not like the cupola. Again, it adds to the height. It's a two-part thing. It's aesthetically does not look right. And two, that it adds to that height that we don't want to draw attention to. So find a way to put a skylight in or add another window, but I cannot, the cupola I can't do. Sorry.
Thank you, Amy. Gary?
My comments are similar. I think it's moving in the right direction. I think the oriel window in the front elevation, that's the oval window up there. I think that's really out of place in the district. I understand the desire for some kind of accent, but it could be a simpler way of making an accent there. There's a little bit of conflicting information because when I look at the drawings, it looks like to me, it looked like the line of the foundation still varies a little bit. When I look at the south, and in the report that the presentation that was made, it was indicated that line of the foundation is constant. If it is constant, that's great. If it's not, I wish it were constant. The cupola also seems it's turning this into a former schoolhouse, and I think maybe a pair of shed dormers facing east could bring you some light up high and might be another response. We have a lot of shed dormers that we've approved in the district that could bring light from the east and could get some light down in the center of that room. And that might be another solution that could be used as a way of bringing some light in and not doing the cupola. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Sean?
Generally, I do like how it's been simplified. I mean, I think the front windows, changing those has been a good move. There's the parts on the deck, I think, is also a good move. And the simplification, I think, is good. I think the cupola, the last time I thought it looked strange. Last time, I still think it looks a bit strange. And I think with Amy and Gary, there's probably if light is the primary reason, there are probably other ways to get there other than the cupola. But certainly, at the end of the day, I think the house I think it's moving in the right direction. I think it sits on the lot quite nicely. So okay, we're picking on these things, but I think there's some parts of it that have been improved quite nicely and moving in the right direction. But I think the other ones, Gary and Amy talked about.
Thank you. Frank?
Sorry, I forgot to mute. I think everything else has been said. I said getting simplified in the house helped out a lot. That's it. Everything else has been hashed over.
Thank you. I agree. I saw the cupola and it just made me laugh. I said, it just doesn't work. I think you have to look at some other ways. I get wanting the light in, and I think that's, but I think you need to look at some other ways to do that. But I do think that you're headed in the right direction. So there's, we focus on all the negative here, but there's so much positive about this house. So the last question is the conceptual. Does the board support the conceptual exterior materials and material transitions?
I'll go ahead. For the most part, the materials are fine. They've been simplified a little bit. Again, I think some of the new deck material is a better choice. When you come back, make it clear what the material, the foundation, where that line of material is as far as transition, try to make it all around the same height. But overall, yeah, it looks like you simplified it. To me, it's a matter of 1 or 2 claddings per elevation. When you get to 3, it gets a little busy. So, but moving in the right direction.
Thank you, Amy. Gary?
I made the comment about the foundation alignment earlier, but I think the materials, I've been fine with the direction it's headed with the materials. So I don't have anything to add to the earlier comments on that.
Thank you. Sean?
Me either. I think Amy said a couple of points. For me, it's no other comments on that.
Okay, thank you. Frank?
Nope, nothing else to add.
Okay. So I think the height from the street is still a concern. Possibly some architectural details like the oval window and the cupola. I think those are really the big things right now that are kind of standing in the way from this going to the next step. So do you have any questions or need any clarity from us?
I do not. Let Tim, do you have anything at this point?
Yeah, just to clarify the height, is it 2 feet that we're trying to get out of this? Is it 5 feet? Is there any type of guidance I can get?
In my opinion, it's not a number. It's a look to the highest point when compared to the roofs around it and the overall feel of the height in relation to that lot.
Okay.
So how much wall face is right up against you, because it's right up next to the street. So it's not an exact number to me. It's going to be a look.
And we could push this house back a little bit, so that could be addressed too. I mean, we have a big backyard. We're way under lot coverage. So, I mean, I think 5 or 6 feet would be easily accomplished with the reduction of height, I think.
Yeah, the fact that it's already sits up higher than some of the other houses do.
Yeah.
As Amy said, it's the look. It's not the number.
But contributing to that look, and I want to reinforce this point because it's implied in the sketch the consultant did, is the double gable in that front is not helping you. That double gable is making the height. It's making it seem even more massive than the house may be. Whereas she reduced it to one gable and a narrower gable. So the amount of wall and the scale changed when she did that. And the perception of mass changed when she did that. Doesn't mean it has to be as low. For me, it doesn't need to be as low as the whole thing that she did. But she went from a double gable to a narrower single gable, which I think helps reduce the apparent height of it. So along with the comment Amy made, it's not a fixed number. And Tim, earlier you were quoting some numbers for our zoning code and how we measure height of roof and to the midpoint between the eave and the peak. And that is a stipulation of the zoning code. But here we're talking about the perception and the relative height to the homes around it. So
yeah, that's why I went out and measured those eave heights, because that's the real number that we have that we can.
And I think the front eave height is consistent with the house catty corner north, but it is fine. But it's that big mass going up beyond that.
Okay.
Nikki, I forgot to ask, were there any public comments for this case?
I was hoping that you would remember me. And yes, we do have one public comment this evening. I did provide it to our board members as well as the applicants with Chase's help in advance of this meeting. I would be happy to read that public comment into the record if it would be helpful for the board tonight.
Does anyone have a feeling about this? Is this the 3-page?
Correct.
Okay. Is there another way besides reading it we could get it into the record?
I'm happy to display it on the screen.
I think maybe you should go ahead and read it then.
Okay. So this public comment is from Ken Clare. His address is 8474 Inver Gordon Court, Dublin, Ohio 43017. The subject is 156 South High Street, Burchard Residence. Excited by the facade drawings for 156 South High Street, I wanted to offer my congratulations and support. Upon further investigation and consideration, and considering the comments made, I hope you don't mind my 2 cents. The design submitted by T. Walton Carr was refreshing, well-developed, simple, and considerate of its context and needs of today. I respect preservation design's comments, but question if they rise to the level of denial. Many seemed textbook and are being enforced without an overall consideration of this project's need for, quote, today's expression. For example, I've struggled with the concept of the deck. This is a 3,000 square foot house with an attached garage being built and respectful of 2020. It is not going to mimic the culture and economy of the early 1900s. New buildings should not, quote, harm, but complement existing fabric. This is best accomplished via scale, massing materials, and elements of the existing vernacular. Apparently, the ARB didn't think this important to allow that intrusive library. A good design strikes a balance. Use care to avoid sanitizing design or doing paper architecture. It is the quirks and contrasts that make a project unique, by which also can be additive to the context. Beware of mediocrity or uniformity applying our, quote, safe knowns. Ironically, early buildings did exhibit differences and nuances, partly intentional, but also responsive to function. And historical properties also include many early additions and alterations, giving life to the hood. Fenestration didn't always align, nor were windows the same size, giving priority to function. I think Carr's design does the same thing. Would we have seen that large box bay window, deck, or garage doors? No, but that doesn't make them inappropriate. They are true to function of today. Historical infills work best when they can meld, blend, and fit within the context, physical and in use. The consultant raised concerns over the extra doodads that might not be historically appropriate. Perhaps true, but how harmful and at what cost, i.e., lack of details, makes a mass appear even larger. They suggest the diamond-shaped glazing didn't exist during this historical period, which of course is not true and shouldn't matter if it does or doesn't occur elsewhere in our district. Those 100 years ago who had money or a desire to show off or, quote, splurge might, quote, up with such special glazing, oval windows, or ridge finials. It holds true today as well. Perhaps the consultants have gone too far to implement the, quote, book. Characters enriched with diversity, especially over time. We should welcome progress, especially if respectful of the historic aspects sought to protect. For me, the original design works and would be a welcome asset to the streetscape and district. I acknowledge the disdain for shutters, the paired windows, and small add-ons, but also respect and recognize the need for variety, expression, and going forward with, quote, baby steps. The revised facade lacks the character of the original, but the reality for most folks is that the overall character, parentheses appeal, from today's eyes keeps us fresh and outweighs any loss of historical accuracy. The details, nuances, material mixtures, the front porch, and excellent gable design and proportions more than compensate for using the double windows and shutters. I miss the original gable treatments, though the revised may exhibit the simplicity the consultant desires. It is really boring and feels inappropriate because of its mass. It would not be inappropriate to move the north bay to the front and include a gable vent. The plainness of the proposed facade doesn't mesh with the rather refined entry porch treatment. And the characteristic frontage wall should be a must in bold. I like the rear windows of the original better. Raising the front gable's ridge to align with the cross ridge is definitely a all capital mistake. The changed fenestration on the connector south elevation is more pleasing. Of the three major masses on the south elevation, does one really think the chimney looks best on the eastern piece versus one of the gabled ends? Regarding change to the large north bay, the narrower width does work slightly better, but I prefer the original less static ganging of 1-2-1. Consider making the small top windows horizontal by lowering to align with the eaves and increasing the height of the bay's roof. Most people would concur with gable adornments such as originally proposed included the slot vents. Raising that lower window next to the smaller bay only makes sense if it works on the interior. If it was a landing window, then I think it should be expressed on the exterior, but not celebrated with like size, type, or shutters. Is the consultant being too stringent and without flexibility? Again, this is a contemporary house fitting on a small lot in 2020. Stables and outhouses have been replaced with garages and indoor plumbing. Modern chimney flue caps replaced ceramic pots. Isn't a prime function of the ARB to avert harm or detriment to the historic nature and character of what exists? I don't believe Mr. Carr's design would do that. Additionally, there were many positives to his original proposal. The initial design offered an excellent porch, entry, and overall balance of interest and simplicity, yet detailed enough to make a showy presence, something done now and in the past, as well as an inviting setback and a frontage wall attribute. However, troublesome things for me include the cupola height, more utilitarian, such as vent, weather vane reducing height, prominence, and heaviness, or remove windows or make horizontal. The cupola, parentheses, replace with chimney. The deck, parentheses, perhaps separate the garage, either connect with infill deck or incorporate a rooftop deck, end parentheses. The rear chimney and the high street access drive, parentheses, remove it bold. Consider moving chimney to the south elevation of the frontage mass in place of the cupola, or provide some flanking windows on the existing plan. Consider a small, simple door hood for the rear door. So much glass on the north versus the south elevation, question mark? Unless steel is used, the deck beam spans seem shallow and excessive without more support. Show more detail. I like the horizontal cable or perhaps a solid wall with stone piers better than wood vertical pickets spaced at 4 inches on center. Thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts. Get her done. Ken Clare.
Send him a text.
So just for the record, the ARB had nothing to say about the library. Just saying. We take no blame or credit for that, depending on your perspective. All right, gentlemen. So do you have what you need from us?
I think so. And if not, we can certainly reach out to Chase.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
We'll see ya.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, so our last case is Getaway Brewing Company. This is a master sign plan. Amendment to a previously approved master sign plan for one new building mounted sign for an existing tenant located within Bridge Park West, Building Z1. The site is in the Bridge Park West development, east of North High Street, 300 feet north of the intersection with Rock Crest Parkway, and is zoned Bridge Street District Historic Transition Neighborhood. And Ms. Martin will be our presenter.
Great, good evening. If you'll just allow me a moment to share my presentation. Okay, as mentioned, this is a request for review and approval of an amendment to a previously approved master sign plan. The site is located within the Bridge Park West development, Building Z1 on the northern portion of the historic district. This tenant space is the northernmost tenant space within this building. The previously approved master sign plan for Bridge Park West includes provisions for a variety of sign types. The sign type classification for the sign proposed tonight is a pedestrian art sign. The master sign plan includes unique provisions to measure the area of a pedestrian art sign. The measurement is shown on your screen. It is the cumulative total of all three exterior facing sides. This measurement style has the result of artificially increasing the total sign area due to its three-dimensional nature. So each side of this sign is 8 square feet in size, consistent with the size permitted throughout historic Dublin. However, due to its three-dimensional nature, those 8 square feet are multiplied by the 3 sides visible from the public right-of-way, and the total sign size is 24 square feet, which is 1 square foot less than the maximum of 25 square feet. This sign is proposed to be a rotating globe design consistent with the Getaway brand. It's aluminum construction, with the globe being the rotating element and the sign cabinet with inside the sign being the fixed element. The sign color is proposed to be teal, and since publishing of the staff report, the applicant has clarified the Pantone color proposed to be used, which is shown on your screen tonight. The sign meets all other requirements, and the board is asked to consider the rotating nature of this sign and whether it is appropriate. The applicant has provided a conceptual character image of what a similar sign may look like on their tenant space. Staff has reviewed this proposal against the master sign plan criteria, the Architectural Review Board standards, as well as the Bridge Street District sign design guidelines. In review of that and in coordination with the applicant, staff is recommending approval with no conditions tonight. Be happy to answer any questions. The applicant is here as well this evening.
Thank you, Nikki. Does that, oh, I said 2 pictures of you there for a minute. Do you have any comments at this point?
No, we're real excited that the project's still moving along. We're looking at hopefully a March-ish kind of opening, which should time out with things, hopefully the world getting a little bit more back to normal as well. And the sign, we have kind of a vacation travel, kind of escape experience kind of vibe going on, and the sign kind of harkens back to some classic travel posters, kind of the mid-century travel poster idea a little bit, the Pan Am logo, kind of reminiscent of that. But it should be a unique and interesting feature, and I think it'll get people's attention and something that's a little bit different.
Thank you. So we'll have board questions. Any questions for?
I have one clarifying question if I read this right. So the diameter of the globe, it's 4 feet. Like that's how big that rotating piece is going to be?
No. So the diameter, sorry, the diameter is just over 2 feet in diameter.
But how can the gateway sign inside it be 36? Because I'm looking at the page 2 of the sign plan, and it's showing the gateway sign is 36 inches, so 3 feet for the sign inside the globe. And then there's a line above the top that says 48 inches, which would be 4 feet. So it's looking like the diameter of the globe is 4 feet.
Yeah, my apologies for the confusion. Yes, it is.
So it's a 4 feet revolving globe.
Yes, 10 feet up. And you get an idea in that other pic in the other slide that Nicole had shown, kind of the scale in reference to the building. That rendering does not have the bar going underneath. We kind of realized in putting it together that it was going to need the extra support there. But in terms of the kind of mass of it, that should be pretty accurate.
So it's sticking like 4.5 feet out from the wall then. The 54.25, that's like how far it's sticking out from the wall.
Yes.
Okay. That was my only question. I just want to clarify the size of this.
Sure. Any other questions?
I only maybe had one question. Maybe it's for staff because I mean, in the master sign plan, I mean, it's very specific that signs don't rotate. It's for me, of all the things that's written in there, the one thing that they call out is rotating. Is there a reason, or we just want to make sure that it was safe? I was trying to, when I read that, we're giving a variance on something that was very specifically called out.
Mm-hmm. So the master sign plan copy and pastes some language from our standard city sign code. The city sign code also prohibits rotating and moving signs. The intent there really is to prohibit, sign tossers or inflatable signs or various sign types that don't align with the aesthetic that we're trying to preserve in Dublin. And so I think that potentially we didn't contemplate a pedestrian art sign when that regulation was written. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, okay. All right. So it's a copy and paste from that. Yep. Okay.
I was gonna say, I also remember when we were putting that code together, the big intention was we did not want like the neon streaming signs like that say lottery here, that come like the moving. That's what we were actually envisioning when we did that code, was those, I guess, the ones where you type in the text and it moves. I know that was one of the big things.
Okay.
So given the fact, Sean's point that it's specifically called out, would we need an exception or a variance for this sign?
Yeah, so this master sign plan process is that variance.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, it was our understanding. We tried to design it so we wouldn't actually have to, so it would fit within the regular plan, but then the spinning part, we didn't realize that was against code.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Is it always spinning, or is it something you turn on and off?
I think there will be a switch on it, but the intent is that it's a very slow, like 1 rotation per minute.
Okay, that was my other question. How quickly is it spinning?
It's a slow guy. It's not a fast train.
Okay.
Frank, any questions? Since we can't see you.
Oh, sorry, I was just trying to unclick and it wouldn't unclick. Actually, it's for Nikki. At the end, you had your things where conditions met, or excuse me, where is I'm looking for my note here. You said there was conditions on 2 of the criteria that were to be met, and then I think you said there weren't any conditions. Like your PowerPoint that you displayed said there was criteria to, with conditions. Can you explain that, or are they gone?
Yeah, sure thing. So in short, the applicant has resolved the conditions and the applicant or the ARB no longer needs to apply them.
Gotcha. Okay. Understood. Nope, that was my big question.
Any other questions?
I have a somewhat related question for Nikki. When something like this, we're not given a construction drawing of this, and this has some real life safety issues. So when and there's even more stress created on this sign and on the side of the building when something moves. So when they submit, do they submit like fabrication drawings and engineered drawings that show how this will be tied back, like for building permit?
Yeah. We have many. We've gone through a couple iterations and reviews with the city, and that's very much a part of the process.
Okay, good.
Yeah, Gary. So they'll need to be stamped by an engineer, a structural engineer, as well as somebody with electrical experience.
Okay, good.
Good, good. Are there any public comments on this?
There are no public comments on this evening.
Okay, all right. So any discussion, board members? Frank, I'll let you start first since you've had to go last every time.
No problem. I think I understand where Amy's going with the 4 feet out. Actually, more than that, technically, 54 inches and a quarter, I think I said. So it does come off as big. I don't really like the idea of giving variances off top, easily. I almost like to hear what the rest of the board has to say about this sign, just because of that. But in regard also, it is such a unique new building and where it's at that it, historically there's nothing historic to really review on that structure. So that's kind of what I wanted to hear where everybody else is going to go on that. But yeah, I was kind of leaning with the Amy issue initially, like that does seem to be pretty big, but looking and if the drawings are to scale, it gives you a better idea because it is 10 feet up. So that does reduce the feeling of how far it's protruding out towards the street. That's it.
Thank you. Sean?
For me, I really don't have any comments. From a sign, just from this one side, our normal side are going to be 8 square feet. So, sort of 2 by 4 anyways. So for me, I think it looks neat actually. So I don't have a comment specifically on that.
Okay, thanks. Gary?
Well, to me, other than the spinning, it meets the code requirement. And I think Nikki and the staff know better than I do the context of that rotation issue. So I rely on something like this on the staff's knowledge and knowledge of the background. So, and it's open, it is big, but it's up high. That building's a pretty large scale and it's open. So that helps reduce the visual mass. So I'm fine with it.
Mm-hmm. Amy?
Yeah, it meets code. I personally don't like it, but that's just my own personal opinion. But I think, yeah, it meets code. And like I said, the intent of the moving stuff that, if I remember right, back when I did the code years ago, this wasn't the intent of it. And it's also moving very slow. So I guess I can support it.
Okay. Yeah, I actually think it's kind of neat. And I like the fact that it's on a corner. I think that it's more open. If it was in a more of a closed area, I think it would be overwhelming. But the fact that it would be hanging off a corner, I think it would be fine. So with that, I'm looking for a motion to approve the master sign plan.
I can make the motion to approve the master sign plan.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay.
Ms. Cram,
Yes.
Mr. Cotter,
Yes.
Ms. Bryan, Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Kaneki.
Yes.
Congratulations on your new sign.
Thank you guys so much. Thanks for your time, and I hope you have a good rest of the night.
Thank you. All right. Do we have any communication?
We do have a few things. So first and foremost, I want to thank you for your participation on Monday night at the joint meeting of the boards and commissions. I thought that was a really fruitful discussion, and there was a surprising amount of alignment between boards and commissions on various topics, which was good validation to see. So thank you. And based on that conversation, I also want to reassure the board that one of our top priorities as a planning division is to continue to move forward the code amendments as quickly as possible. And with that, the guidelines. So the guidelines will be back before you in January. Our hope is to obtain a recommendation of approval to the Planning and Zoning Commission. The code will also be going to Planning and Zoning Commission. And we anticipate, given the thought and care you've put into these requirements over the last several years, that it will go smoothly. So thank you all for that.
And along those lines, I want to thank Amy and Gary for working with Nikki to get the last piece of this kind of put together so we can go forward in January.
Well, I haven't done anything yet. I just saw something come through today. So you should thank Amy thus far.
Go ahead, Nikki.
Yeah. So yes, thank you to both Amy and Gary. I look forward to coordinating those final details out over the holidays. So hopefully I don't bother you too much. So the final item or a couple items for this evening, obviously, as we roll into January, we will be preparing an annual report. So if you have any items to share with myself or the chair, please feel free to do so. We'd love to highlight any accomplishments or items you'd like to look forward to in 2021. And the final item is really just a huge and sincere thanks to all of you for your patience, flexibility as we transitioned to online meetings in 2020. It was not expected at all. I remember our March meeting being canceled. And I wished we could have completed it. And in hindsight, I'm glad we didn't. So as we, moved online, we've been able to maintain our continuity of government. And I think it speaks volumes about your professionalism. So I hope the rest of the community recognizes that and seconds me in our appreciation of you. So thank you.
Well, on a night like tonight, we're really glad to be doing this virtually. Nobody wanted to go out.
So when's our Christmas party?
Yeah.
It'll have to be in spirit this year, Frank.
Okay, I can go with that.
Okay. So with that, I have no additional communications unless anyone has anything else to add.
I would just like to, again, thank all of you for, I'm so impressed with this board, and I want to thank Nikki. I mean, you and Chase and the rest of the staff have just been amazing. You've stepped up. We've watched you grow, and we're very proud parents. So.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that.
So I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday. whatever that looks like for each of you. It's going to look very different than it has in the past, but I'm very honored to be serving on this board with all of you. So thank you very much. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Y'all,
Everyone.
give
Happy
me
holidays.
We have to stay.
just 1 second. I'll stop the live stream. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.